In the cute, quaint little town of Tivoli, New York, is the Hotel Tivoli, which I believe has 11 rooms you can stay at and a farm-to-table restaurant on the main floor. It's located in a cute little town with a lot of turn-of-the-century buildings. This is one of those buildings right across the street from the Hotel Tivoli. And this is looking west along Broadway, the main street of Tivoli. So where Tivoli is, it's about 5 miles north of my last video that I did at Bard College at the Fisher Performing Arts Center. And it's across the Hudson River from Socrates, New York, where Jimmy Fallon grew up. And it's also south of the Clermont State Historic Site, which I'll talk about after I show some clips of Tivoli. So let's take a look at Tivoli. Don't know where to start here. We're in the little town of Tivoli, which is just north of the Bard campus. And it is a really cute downtown. I'll show you when we get there. Interesting row of houses here, all tall and the same design, but different colors. Okay, here's a little downtown coming up here. Alright, just like in Rhinebeck, I'll just show you the town from the main intersection. That building was built in 1899. And this is, it had a name on it that said the Hotel Tivoli, but I don't know if it's still a hotel. There's another place called the Hotel Mori. Don't know if that is still a hotel, doubt it. Anyway, it doesn't get much more picturesque or quaint in Tivoli here. It's the trouble with the Hudson Valley. It's such a picturesque place. There's so many places to explore. But I just wanted to stop briefly here on our way. Definitely check it out if you're in the area. In Tivoli, they don't have a station here. I was looking for a little historic station in this area, but what a setting, huh? And it's another place where trains can go by at 80 miles an hour, so no fooling around. And in Tivoli, just outside of town, there's this beautiful Hudson River church, and I found out about it when I was visiting one of the historic homes here, and one of the wealthy people who lived in the home, this is where they got married. And I'll try to find that and include anything more that I can about who that was who got married here. Beautiful church. And just north of the church is this bust of Eleanor Roosevelt with a quote from her to the United Nations in 1958. I don't know whether the Roosevelts were married here. Could that have been the famous couple I remember reading about? I will have to check. Just a stunning scenery here in North Germantown. Look over at the Hudson. We skirted the edge of regular Germantown. This is North Germantown. So no, Eleanor Roosevelt's bust is not located in a little courtyard just to the north of St. Paul's Church in Tivoli. She and Franklin actually got married in Manhattan at the apartment of her aunt, and she was given away by Teddy Roosevelt. But I want to talk a little bit about who I did learn got married in this church, and it will relate to the Clermont State Historic Site north of Tivoli. Here's a view of Clermont looking west out over the Hudson. It gets its name from having a clear view of the mountains, Clermont in French, and those are the Catskills across the river. Very picturesque. So this was a woman who was born in 1909 and grew up in the house, and she lived until the year 2000. Her name is Honoria Livingston McVitie, and she is part of the Livingston clan who goes way back to pre-revolution days, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But when I visited this house in the late 1900s, she was still living in the house. She might have been away when the tours were going on in the house. She might have been upstairs in one part of the house you couldn't go to, but she still lived in the house, even though it had been opened up for public tours, which I found interesting. And just seeing her picture, I thought she looked interesting. I wanted to know more about her. So this was a picture of her as a young woman, and when she was 22, she married a man 10 years older than her, Reginald McVitie, and they were married in St. Paul's Church in Tivoli on September 12th, 1931. And there is even now an Honoria Livingston McVitie Society that you can belong to, and I believe this is a bust of hers on the property outside the house. And she was married in the church, and she's also buried in the church with her husband and her parents and other generations of Livingstons in the cemetery at St. Paul's Church in Tivoli. So she was born to John Henry and Alice Delafield Livingston, and Alice Livingston was John Henry's third wife. I think his first two wives both died young. His first wife died after giving birth to his first child, and then his second wife lived until her 40s. So by the time he married his third wife, she was much younger than him. She was 24 years younger. So when they had Honoria, he was 60 years old and Alice was 36. So Honoria is descended from a line of Livingstons that goes all the way back to before the American Revolution, and her great-great-grandfather, Robert Livingston IV, was one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, and I think one of the key authors of the Constitution. A lot of history there. And one of her grandparents had the name named after the house, Clermont Livingston. And I believe Robert Livingston IV, his middle name was also Robert. He was Robert Livingston. And going through the ancestry of Honoria, some of the Livingstons married other Livingstons. Maybe they were more distant relatives, maybe not, kind of like the Roosevelts. So there weren't as many people that go around back then, and the upper class wanted to stay with the upper class, so sometimes they married within the family. Here's Robert Livingston. He was born 30 years before the Declaration of Independence in 1776, so he was a young author at that time, and he died at Clermont. And as I mentioned, he's buried at St. Paul's Cemetery. It'd be interesting to go through the cemetery and try to read some of the headstones. I think there's some of them are getting pretty worn or kind of grown over. It'd be nice if it was all made so that it would be very readable, so you could take in all the history. And Robert Livingston, interestingly, he married Mary Stevens, and he died in 1813. And then she was in Washington, D.C., and she died in Georgetown in Washington, D.C. And what's interesting is she was buried in the Georgetown Cemetery, and it turned out that she had an unmarked grave. And here she was married to one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. So they discovered this, and she was moved, her body was moved to be in the cemetery in Clermont. But why she wasn't buried there in the first place, that's a whole story lost in the annals of history. So this house that was built by Robert Livingston IV, he built another house. He also called it Clermont, so there were two Clermonts. There's multiple Livingstons, there's multiple Clermonts, but this home, which is on the property of the State Historic Site, it burned. And back in the early 1900s, they said maybe the fire was caused by a spark that flew off of one of the steam engines going up the Hudson line, which is nearby, and caught the house on fire. That is one conjecture. So today, say some of the ruins from this house, not the main house, but this other large house, are still on the property. So that's been a look at Tivoli and one slice of history associated with Tivoli, and I found it really interesting, and I hope if you have a chance, if you're in the area, I would definitely visit Tivoli. It's got a cool vibe, especially in the summer. There's more activity, beautiful area. I think probably some of the people who live in Tivoli work and teach at Bard. I don't know if any of the students live this far off campus, but you could. And it's just a really scenic little town and a very scenic area. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.